Hello everyone, hope you all are doing well. Today in this video, I am going to discuss a poem by Wilfred Owen. The name of the poem is Anthem for Doomed Youth. So let's first know a few important things about the poet Wilfred Owen. As you can see, the dates 1893 to 1918. Owen was a leading poet of the First World War. I hope you all remember the dates of First World War 1914 to 1918. Most of the other poets during this period used to glorify war and martyrdom. But Owen talked about the horrors and pity of war, as he had the first hand experience of the horrors of war and life in the trenches. He himself was a soldier. He used to say, "My subject is war and the pity of war. The poetry is in the pity." After months of heavy fighting, he was diagnosed with shell shock, a kind of post-traumatic stress disorder. He was evacuated to England and arrived at Craiglockhart War Hospital near Edinburgh in June 1917. These details of Owen's life is, are indeed very important. Why? That you will get to know very soon. Here he met another great war poet, Siegfried Sassoon, who encouraged him to compose the best of his poems during this time. Anthem for Doomed Youth was written in 1917 while Owen was at Craiglockhart Hospital. A handwritten draft of the poem survives, on which Owen has written with Sassoon's amendments. The title of the poem was actually Sassoon's suggestion. Owen was killed on 4th November 1918 while attempting to lead his men in the battlefield. So here we can see that Owen himself was a soldier and he fought during the First World War. So he saw the devastation, the horror and pity of war from close quarters, and that's why he never ever glorified war in his poems. This particular poem, Anthem for Doomed Youth, is a lament for the deaths of the young soldiers who died in the battlefield. In highlighting the reality of life in the trenches, Owen shows the futility of war, the uselessness of war, and loss of life in the battlefield. A striking contrast between the harsh reality of the battlefield and the solemn rituals of the church shows the inability of religion to provide the healing touch to the grief-stricken hearts of those left behind. The poem is written in the form of a sonnet. So, as you all know that in a sonnet we find 14 lines. The first 8 lines are called octet or octave and the last 6 lines are called sestet. Owen here rejected the nationalistic propaganda practiced by most of the war poets. What was the nationalistic propaganda? To glorify war, to glorify martyrdom means to glorify death in the battlefield. Like if you die in the battlefield, you are sure to reach heaven. This kind of nationalistic propaganda was rejected by Wilfred Owen in favor of the realistic portrayal of the adverse impact of war on society and humanity at large. So Owen only showed the bleak aspects, the drawbacks of war in his poems. Now, let us mm, proceed with the meaning of the poem. Lines 1 to 4. What passing bells for these who die as cattle! Only the monstrous anger of the guns, only the stuttering rifles' rapid rattle can patter out their hasty orisons. So, before discussing these lines, I want you to note the title of the poem, which is Anthem for Doomed Youth. Anthem means a solemn song. Okay. Here, passing bell refers to the bell of the church that announces someone's death, that is the funeral bell. And patter out means to make quick sound or to speak rapidly and noisily. Orison is prayer. Here it is for the dead soldiers. Here Owen, being a soldier himself, was well aware of the brutality and horrors of war, and so at the very beginning of the poem he expresses his bitterness at the death of those soldiers who die like cattle in an undignified manner. He shows how the soldiers have been dehumanized in the war. He starts the poem with a rhetorical question: what passing bells for those who die as cattle? The answer is implied in the very question. No church bell is rung to mourn the death of those soldiers. No prayers are made for the departed souls. The soldiers are dying like cattle in their herds, with no ceremony, no funeral bells, and no prayers for them. Only the monstrous anger of the guns and the stuttering rifles are there to mark the death of those soldiers. Now let's move on to the next four lines. Let me first read out the lines. No mockeries now for them, no prayers nor bells, nor any voice of mourning save the choirs, the shrill, demented choirs of wailing cells and bugles calling for them from sad shires. First, let me give you the meaning of some words. Here, choir refers to the church choir. Choir means a chorus that sings as part of a religious ceremony. Here it is obviously referring to the funeral of the dead. The choir that is sung to commemorate the dead people, to commemorate the death of these soldiers. Demented means crazy or mad, and shells refer to the metal containers full of explosives, usually fired from large guns. And bugle is a brass instrument like a small trumpet that is used for military signals. And one more word, that is shire. Shires means countries and countryside in England. Okay. So here In these four lines, the poet says that the shells and bugles serve as choirs for the dead soldiers. The sound of the shells and bugles serve as choirs for the dead soldiers. Owen also addresses the religious ceremonies like ringing of church bells, prayers, and choirs sung in praise of the dead as mockeries. The poem reflects Owen's loss of faith as he shows how inadequate religion and faith are when faced with the reality of the trenches. Okay? Now, let us move on to the next three lines. What candles may be held to speed them all, not in the hands of boys, but in their eyes shall shine the holy glimmers of goodbyes. Here in the sestet, Owen says that the young men will not have candles. The only light they will get will be the reflections in their fellow soldiers' eyes. They will not get any ceremonial goodbyes from their family members. Now, the last three lines. The pallor of girls' brows shall be their pall, their flowers the tenderness of patient minds, and each slow dusk a drawing down of blinds. So, pallor means paleness, and pall. Pall means shroud, that is the cloth used for covering the dead body. You may also call it coffin cover. So here Owen says that the tragedy, the sadness, or the paleness of the girls who lost their lovers in the war in the battlefield will substitute the shroud for the as the shroud for the dead. So instead of uh, a decent shroud or coffin cover, they will get the paleness of their beloved women or the sadness, the sorrow of their beloved women. And instead of flowers, they will get the tender thoughts of those who are left behind. The word dusk in the last line signifies the end of the soldiers' lives, the end of youth, which is like daylight. Drawing down of blinds, this particular phrase refers to the lingering sadness. It shows how mourning has become inevitable for the family, how it has become a way of life for those who are left behind. Thus, you can see that in this poem, Owen has depicted the brutality and the horrors of war, the pity of war, the tragedy of those who are left behind, and how the soldiers have been dehumanized, how they have been reduced to the status of cattle who die in herds, who are not who are not receiving any kind of ceremonial goodbyes from their family members. So, I hope you have understood the poem and this analysis of the poem has helped you. If you find this video helpful, then please like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next video, as in the next video you will get MCQs on this poem. Thank you for watching. Thank you all.